I wouldn't say it's a breadcrumb, like this is a whole ass piece of bread.
Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be reading the lowest rated books on my bookshelves. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, what is the lowest rated book on your bookshelf? This is a fun raid my shelves idea that I've had for a while, which is basically just to read the lowest rated books from my owned TBR. On Goodreads, there's a shelf in which I have all of my owned TBR books listed, and I just went through, sorted that by lowest rating, and we are going to talk about those books here today. So starting at the very bottom is Cherish Farrah by Bethany Morrow, and this baby has a 3.03. That's quite low. Usually if a book is under 3, I really reevaluate whether or not I want to read it. Yes, reading's subjective. Everybody has their own opinion. But if that big of a majority is bringing down the rating that much, is it actually worth the read? I don't know. This one did surprise me because I felt like when it came out, I actually heard a lot of positive things about it. A very simple synopsis of this book that I initially heard was Black teenage girl version of Babe, I'm Gonna Steal Your Life, in which these two girls are the only Black girls at their school. One of them is sort of a scholarship student. The other is adopted by a white family and is insanely rich. And these two are best friends. However, unbeknownst to the richer one, Cherish, right? Farrah is out to get her, a sociopath maybe, possibly a psychopath, I'm not 100% sure. But I do know that Farrah is determined to make Cherish's life her own. I am apprehensively excited about this, but with that low of an average rating, I will admit, my expectations have dropped. Who knows what direction this will lead. Then at an average rating of 3.22 stars is Dead Girls by Nekesa, afia. I bought this at Target years ago, I think around the time when it first came out, and I was still trying to be a cozy mystery girly. I've kind of given up on that. If I pick one up and I like it, great, but I'm not really actively trying anymore. However, this one intrigued me because of the unique setting. It is set in 1926 Harlem, and we are following a Black lesbian, I believe, who unfortunately ends up getting mixed up with the police and is told either she can go to jail or she can try and help the police in searching for this serial killer. The few people I know who've read this gave it 3 stars. I know it's the start of a series, and so if I do like it, which hopefully I will, maybe this will finally be a cozy mystery series I can get invested in. I'm honestly not gonna hold my breath on that one. Lastly, we have Instinct by Jason M. Hough, which currently has an average rating of 3.36 stars. Not terrible, but definitely on the lower side. This is one I've never heard anybody talk about though. My mom actually pointed this out to me when we went to a Barnes & Noble closing sale, and she was like, hey, this sounds kind of interesting. Why don't you buy it? I think it was maybe $4, so sure, why not? This is set in a very small town in Washington in which our main character is a new sheriff, deputy, some small town cop, but of course the sleepy town that she tried to escape to disappears, and instead she ends up having lots of weird incidents where it seems like people are getting into danger, but by doing really stupid stuff that locals to this area would know not to do. As the synopsis says, she uncovers a larger conspiracy with more twists and turns than a mountain road and a danger around every corner. Small town conspiracy did pique my interest, but again, saw that really low rating and sort of rethought this one a bit. I've never heard anybody talk about it. I don't know why, but that makes me more interested to see if I'll like it or not. We'll find out together. No idea as to how these 3 babies are gonna go. This either might be a really good reading vlog or a really bad reading vlog. Fingers crossed for the first. Hey guys. So I have started into Cherish Farrah by Bethany Morrow, which is the lowest rated book on my owned TBR. It's pretty surprising. When you look at Goodreads, the top reviews are all like 4 or 5 stars. I'm very intrigued about this. So far, I am at chapter 5. I have to say, our main character whose eyes we're seeing through, Farrah, if she's not a psychopath, she definitely has psychopathic tendencies. She is such a control freak. She catalogs like all of her reactions and figures out how she wants to respond to things before she ever does. She's so manipulative in how she interacts with Cherish, her best friend. She's manipulative in how she interacts with Cherish's parents. It's commented that Farrah's mom is quite similar to her in personality, possibly hinting at the fact that her mom may be a psychopath as well. If I'm being honest, I think it more comes across so far that Farrah's mom is the only person who really knows how Farrah is, but she's her daughter. She doesn't want to believe that of her, but in things we see her mom say or do, you can tell she knows something is up. Something's not quite right. Unfortunately, Farrah's family has recently gone through some financial trouble and had to sell their house. It seems like Farrah's father has found a job, but it might be in a different state. So chances are Farrah is going to be separated from her best friend Cherish, and she does not want that. She will not allow that. I definitely am starting to get that feeling of the girl, I'm coming to steal your life. And of course, with that, the first book that comes to mind in comparison is The Last Mrs. Parrish, which I actually ended up DNFing because I just could not stand the main character. I didn't mind the fact that she wasn't a likable character, but I had such a hard time following her because I couldn't root for her. I don't really like Farrah here either. I definitely think she's really manipulative. And it's weird because on one hand, I can understand her perspective. She's a teenager, she's 17, she's spent her whole life like this, and to have that completely uprooted, you know, that would really mess with any kid. So it's not so much that I'm rooting for her to steal Cherish's life, I'm rooting for her to find something that makes her happy again, even if what she's doing here is not particularly great. I don't like Farrah, but I can sympathize for her at the very least. She doesn't really want to steal Cherish's life, she just wants to insert herself into this family. She kind of wants Cherish's parents to adopt her as well. It's been very interesting in that regard, seeing how race plays an element in the story, because Farrah has parents who are Black, whereas Cherish's are white. And not only that, they're quite rich. They're really privileged. Even though her mom has done so much to try and really understand the life Cherish will lead, she didn't grow up a Black woman. She's not going to really understand all of the struggles Cherish will have. But even then, Cherish is not experiencing the same struggles that Farrah will have to in her life, because she's been adopted by these really rich folks who not only have money, but have connections, in comparison to Farrah's parents who made their own way. And unfortunately, that has now crumbled for them. I think the dynamics between the characters that is happening with that element is very interesting thus far, and I can definitely see how that's going to continue throughout this. I'm fairly certain that's probably part of why this gets likened to Get Out, because of that like social horror element. Unfortunately for me, I made the mistake of reading the summary on the back, and honestly, I think the summary kind of gives too much away. I'm gonna put it up here, but like, you guys shouldn't read it. This part alone, I think, would be enough to get you intrigued. This bit down here, I feel like gives away too much. Also, I have an art copy, so that's why the back looks unfinished. Yeah, that's it so far. I am enjoying this. It's more like I'm very intrigued to see where things are gonna go. I'm curious as to how this plot is going to continue forward. Hello, my beautiful peoples. I am 200 pages into Cherish Farrah. I'm enjoying this, but I do have to say, I have no idea what I would label this as when it comes to a genre. I think it is labeled as horror on Goodreads. I don't really know if I would classify this as horror. I definitely would not say it's a thriller. There are some moments that are very unsettling, but at this point, it seems like it's just maybe like a darker contemporary, are starting to hit the point where it's like, something's weird, something's happening. I'm not really sure what it is. Everything is not right. And it's not even so much with Farrah, the character who we're seeing through, the one I'm suspicious of being a psychopath. The best friend, Cherish, is also starting to just act a little odd. And then Cherish had a boyfriend who got in a fight with the guy that Farrah has a crush on, and now that guy and Cherish are getting really close. We don't know exactly what happened there. When Farrah attempts to try and figure things out, it doesn't go the way you're expecting, but it's not completely completely explained. It's not completely revealed. It's just like something isn't right. And it's weird, but I'm still intrigued. I do think as far as the writing goes, the author is pretty wordy. She dedicates a lot of time to describing the setting, describing everything about this family and their home that signifies their wealth, that showcases their status. On one hand, like at the start, it was great because it really added into the atmosphere, reinforced the themes that are being talked about. But by this point, I'm kind of past it. It's like, I get it. You don't have to keep focusing on all these little things around the house. I would say what's really interesting is seeing how Farrah thinks about her relationship with Cherish. That's probably like the next biggest thing that gets talked about, because again, I'm theorizing that Farrah is probably a psychopath, and yet she describes Cherish as somebody she loves. She thinks Cherish is the only person she could ever love. Even when she doesn't really like Cherish, she still loves her. She's the only person she really wants. And it's interesting as far as like a relationship dynamic, and we finally see some pushback from Cherish against Farrah. I could say this has started to lean into some horrific elements, but it's still not, it's not gory, it's just weird. Yeah, at this moment, it's like, I don't know how to feel about this, but my intrigue is a solid 10. I'll give you that. So I have about 120 pages left, and I have no idea where this is gonna go.
Hi, this is Nat from the future giving you a final update on this book because I really enjoyed it. I was hooked the entire way through. It's a very slow burn YA horror. Initially, I wasn't really sure as to where the story itself was actually going to go, but once we hit the climax, everything finally clicked into place. Unfortunately though, there is a scene that happens, it's been a minute since I read this, but I want to say maybe about 200 pages in, lays the groundwork for the twist that's going to take place. And I think the author could have handled it in a better way or just been less obvious, because unfortunately that did sort of ruin part of the suspense. I was pretty skeptical if this was really horror for most of the book, but there was a turning point near the end that really amped up the violence, the body horror. There was this one scene in particular that was shiver-inducing. And I think as far as the writing goes, it was really clever to do this through Farrah's eyes, because you're constantly questioning if she really is processing what's happening the same way somebody who is neurotypical would. Like I mentioned earlier, she definitely reads like a budding psychopath or sociopath, and it's just very interesting to read through her perspective. Then the codependent relationship between Cherish and Farrah is just so interesting in how it is handled. And the more reveals that took place throughout the book, the more invested I was in what was going to happen at the finale. How would their relationship change at the climax? I love reading about this sort of dynamic, but at the same time, I don't feel like it was always true to the characters that had been created. There's also this ongoing competition, power struggle, I don't know what to call it, but this weird thing between Farrah and her mother that honestly by the end felt unresolved. And so I would have appreciated if Morrow kind of wrapped things up there. So in the end, I did like this. I think it built up incredibly well. It just didn't quite stick the landing. As I mentioned, there was that really, I wouldn't say it's a breadcrumb, like this is a whole ass piece of bread to lead you towards guessing the twist. But I think if that had been removed, I would have really, really liked this. Honestly, my main takeaway is I think this just needed a little bit more editing and it would have been a really fantastic YA horror. I came out of this giving it like kind of 4 stars, I'm gonna say. It's really more like a 3.75. Do I think this should be considered one of the lowest rated books on my shelves? No. I definitely have read far worse books. This was a happy surprise. Hi guys, have read a bit further into Instinct. I am currently at 166 pages. So I wouldn't say I'm liking this, but I wouldn't say I'm not liking it either. I'm intrigued by it, but it's slow moving. I'm probably about halfway in and it feels like the main character is finally starting to realize something's going on here. Something's not right. All these weird incidents are connected in some sort of strange way, but she can't place her finger on it. And she too is unfortunately being affected by whatever it is that's doing this. And it has to do with a person's instincts, like what they instinctually do, the things that they don't even really have to think about anymore, and how those instincts are being overridden. It's an interesting way of setting up a mystery, I will say. I also am not really the biggest fan of the main character. She is new to this town. She is the deputy. The sheriff has gone to visit his ailing mother, so she is now in charge. She is the only deputy in charge. A volunteer dispatcher who works sometimes. Mary is really determined to prove herself in this small town, and she constantly is just thinking that like everybody's looking at her and questioning everything she does, which on one hand, like I get where she's coming from with that, but on the other hand, it just feels very, girl, you're not the center of the universe, okay? There's also a really weird romance element that just feels very unnecessary and shoehorned in. Literally anytime she and the local bartender are in the same vicinity, sex like must be talked about, must be mentioned, she must think about it, or like they have to have it. It's so out of place. I don't think it's needed at all. Mary being a female main character, you know, there's the joke about female main characters who are written by men and how guys just like can't do it well. I don't think that's necessarily true across the board, but there's something about Mary that just does sort of showcase to me that she's written by a man, and I can't quite put my finger on what that is. It has to be something in the small details. So like the big one that I can really remember actively making me kind of stop was when she makes a comment about Clara, one of the possible victims, being more aware of her surroundings, not putting herself in situations like this because she was the victim of a mugging. And like I definitely follow what Hough was saying there, but I also feel like majority of women just actively think about that sort of stuff. I mean, at least in my experience, I know I do, I know my friends would, I know my mom would. I just would be aware of that in general in my life, like not having been a victim of something traumatic like Claire is. So that was just a really small thing that kind of highlighted, no, like I think a woman would be more aware of that aspect in the first place, let alone if you're writing a woman who has trauma putting herself in a situation like that. So I don't think Mary as a character is being like overtly sexualized or anything in that regard, at least, but I still just don't really feel totally convinced by her character, if you get what I'm saying. Like I mentioned, the plot is pretty slow moving thus far. We're finally starting to dive in to figure out what's going on, and I am intrigued to see where this is gonna go. I could see it possibly taking like a sci-fi or paranormal turn, which would be interesting. Not anticipating that really though. With how slow this is, I doubt this is gonna be like a new favorite mystery. Hey guys, I finally finished Instinct by Jason Hough. I realized by the end of it that this was like when no one is watching, but without the commentary on systemic racism, also just like a lot more boring. This gears up for the climax around like 75% in. Okay, this is gonna be really exciting. This is gonna be like, let's go, go, go. And then it drags on. It's impressive because it has like action movie elements that are taking place, but it just took forever to get going. Underlying twist wasn't really shocking. Nothing about it was really surprising to me at all. I mean, I didn't have that exact answer, but that was definitely something I'd considered. Who that was behind everything and the why, again, made perfect sense. It wasn't even really a satisfying answer or a satisfying ending. I still don't think the romance element was necessary at all. It seemed so out of place. Mary as a main character was fine. No strong feelings about it one way or another, honestly. That's basically my review. That's it right there. Hey guys, so unfortunately I have decided that I am going to be DNFing Dead Girls. I'm really bummed about this, particularly because I don't like DNFing books that are on my own TBR, but I can't do it. I can't. This was very clearly a debut novel, and I personally think it could have gone through a few more rounds of editing. It didn't feel cohesive, the story did not flow well. Really, writing itself was the biggest problem I had here. It was so incredibly jumpy. Whenever there'd be a change in chapter, I never knew where we were going to next because it was so bouncy. We went all over the place constantly. There was just no real stream to follow along in the story. Every single time, the chapter would just feel incredibly separate from the previous. This didn't feel like a cohesive story. It felt like little random vignettes of this main character trying to possibly solve this crime, but she's really doing not much. I was around 120 pages in when I came to the decision that I just couldn't do it anymore. Our main character isn't particularly particularly likable. She has a lot to say about how people live their lives, how her younger siblings are living their lives, but she's not really doing anything. Like, all she tends to do is go to work, go out to a jazz club with her friends, get wasted, be hungover, go to work again. Yeah, she felt very holier than thou. I also just didn't really have a solid grip on her personality. And then the romance she has with her girlfriend, take it or leave it. There was nothing going on there. I mean, I knew they were a couple, but that's just because I was told they were a couple. I felt nothing between them. As far as the mystery goes, I think the author was trying really hard to build suspense, and it wasn't working, because she would do it by ending chapters with one line to kind of give you a hint as to where we were going next, almost an old school radio broadcast of a story would do to, you know, make you tune back in for the next one. But it doesn't work in chapter format, in my opinion. So I already had a guess as to where the story was going to go, and I just didn't really care to watch it unfold, because again, it didn't really build suspense. It just sort of laid a breadcrumb out for me way too early. I also could not get past the name that the press gave to this killer, the girl killer. I mean, that is a name. I get why this one has such a low rating. It's a shame, because the idea of the story is really cool, set in the 1920s, Harlem. It's doing nothing. There's nothing to connect me with it. I was 100 pages in, and it somehow felt like I had read 300 pages and I had read 3 pages, because literally nothing had really gone on in the plot. So much had happened that wasn't important in reality. Unfortunately, DNFing this one, but that does officially conclude this reading vlog. So basically, sometimes Goodreads reviewers are not always right, because Cherish Farrah actually worked out quite well for me. These two, however, I could have done without, but at least it got 2 books off of my own TBR. And this one will probably stay on my shelves, because again, I liked this one. I would have no qualms with rereading it or like passing it out to people to borrow. Maybe I'll actually get a finished copy. At least this was one that took me by surprise, because I had such low expectations going in. So all right, y'all, that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me a pool emoji in the comments. I have all my socials, as well as a few ways you can support me, linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!